Traveling to Vietnam could be one of the best things you ever do when it comes to traveling to Southeast Asia. It's one of the best, most diverse, and just crazy chaotic countries you'll ever see in Southeast Asia. So this past week, I've been sent some articles through the email below about my thoughts on different parts of Vietnam, which are kind of surprising to a lot of Western people that they don't expect living in Vietnam or even just visiting Vietnam. Today, what I'm going to do, instead of going through this full article, as it is a huge 15 different facts about it, which get pretty detailed, I'm going to pick out the top 5 things that I have found that have been the most surprising to Western people when they come to Vietnam to either live or just travel as a basic tourist. And at the very end, we're going to do one extra bonus one that I think is actually quite important. So without further ado, guys, let's get into the first one, the coffee culture. Vietnam has had a very unique history when it came to coffee. The French originally brought it over and they showed them how to cook it. Is it cooking? Is it baking? What do you call it? I don't know. But that wasn't enough. If you guys have ever been to France, the coffee's good. It is. They do a lot of the latte stuff and whatnot, but it's not Vietnamese coffee. So something happened in between. The coffee is good. It's some of the best you'll find in the world. It's also some of the most unhealthiest that you'll ever find in the world. There's something more to it. If you've ever been to Vietnam, then you already know that coffee shops here are like hotels. You can stay there all day. You can order food through Grab, bring it there and eat it. You can order coffee from the next door neighbor and bring it in there and drink it. So it's quite common in Vietnam to stay at a coffee shop for 3 to 4, 5, 6 hours to sleep there. Seriously. Hammocks there to hang out. It's very common to bring a bunch of food, have celebrations, bring coffee and drinks and stuff, and go to these coffee shops to sit down, and the staff will bring your cups and straws for it all. So when you combine all of this stuff together, this truly gives Vietnam a very unique coffee experience, as you can't do this in America or Canada or Malaysia or Thailand. You can't go to a coffee shop for 7 or 8 hours and just sit there. You've seen the news on TV. People do it in America, they get the cops called on them. You do it in Thailand or Malaysia, which I tried because I work a lot. I got asked to leave, or I got asked that I need to buy something else, or I got asked if there's anything wrong with me. That is a huge difference when it comes to the Vietnam coffee culture. So when you do get here, don't be surprised if you see people pretty much staying there all day. Don't expect to go into a full Highland coffee or a Vietnamese coffee shop that's completely packed and full, thinking that somebody might get up in the next few minutes so you can sit down. That might not happen. Number 2, teachers are highly respected in Vietnam. This is quite a tough one, and I get asked this a lot. Are teachers truly respected in Vietnam? How do the students teach us as foreign teachers? Now, there is a difference between a foreign teacher and a Vietnamese teacher. Now, understand, when I say foreign teacher, let's just talk about race. Let's talk about white people, black people, Spanish people, Filipino people. Anybody that is not a Vietnamese native person, you could be Vietnamese American, you will still get treated the same as a white person to an extent. When it comes to respect, these Vietnamese teachers are definitely respected way more. It's more on a fear factor, though. If you've ever been to a traditional government-style school, there are means of discipline that are done that you could get in a lot of serious trouble in a Western country. And I'm not saying this is all Vietnamese teachers, not at all. There is just this stigma that you respect the teacher, obviously. And these teachers also speak Vietnamese, so they have quick access to parents and making things happen, if you know what I mean. When it comes to us, the Western people, we are more like friends to the Vietnamese students. And you'll see this real fast. As soon as you walk into a room, everybody's excited. You'll hear the same questions like, what's your name? Where are you from? How old are you? Do you have wife? You know, like, I don't mean to make fun of the accent, but that's kind of how the accent sounds when it comes to English here. You will get these questions. The students are excited. They'll be playing with you. They'll be having fun. And you'll start noticing over time, within like a week, a month, maybe 3 months, that the energy starts dropping. I don't care how good of a teacher you are, how fun you are. The energy drops. The respect starts going away. They start playing on their phone. They start back talking to you. I've known teachers. There's actually a teacher I knew from Australia that worked out at the school I was at that got his arm bitten by a student. The parents pretty much blamed the teacher. The school didn't care, and the student kept acting a fool weeks after, and nobody did anything about it. As in us being respected, I think we're more friends. We're more of the outsider than we are an actual teacher when it comes to Vietnam. And this reminds me when I was at Light Show, a quick story. I had a student, this kid was throwing pencils and stuff at students. He was always yelling. He was always screaming, Nomad. And if you know what that means, it just means mother effer, or go F your mother. And it was just, but he did it because it was funny. The kid's like, you know, and I get it. I was a kid too, and I said some really bad stuff back in the day. But what I ended up doing was putting him outside the room in front of the door, and I said, stay out here for 5 minutes. You know, you need to chill out, bro. Within 2 minutes, he was crying. The TA came up from a different class and pretty much threw him in the classroom and said he has to stay in this room, and then she locked us in the classroom. And when I went there after, Her response, believe it or not, was the parents paid for the class. You can't just remove people. Figure it out next time. Do know you will be respected to an extent, but remember you're a foreigner. You can never truly become Vietnamese. You could marry a citizen, and you will still get asked the same questions. Can you use chopsticks? Fact number 6, Vietnam is very diverse. When it comes to Vietnam, you can see here, Vietnam is a very diverse country. This is so true. There is, I'm thinking 38 or something, hold on. There's 54 ethnic groups. Vietnam has got to be one of the most ethnically diverse countries in all of Asia. Like seriously, all of Asia. I would step it outside of Southeast Asia at this point. A lot of these minorities are Chinese based, like Hmong people, for example. I got to stay with some Hmong people and I lived in Lai Châu. This was like northwest of Vietnam. Now here's the catch though, like places like Malaysia and Thailand where diversity is rather high, you'll mingle with the people. Like we were just in Malaysia and the Indian people, the Chinese people, you had some like Cambodian mixed people that we got to meet out there. But the point being is these different ethnic groups usually are part of the communities. So you see them all. The thing with Vietnam is it's not like this. The minorities of Vietnam typically are in the outskirts. They cover most of the west and northwest parts of Vietnam. They're not really mingling with the Vietnamese culture unless it's because they're trying to sell a product or they have a market kind of a thing. Lai Châu and Sapa are two big ones for the Hmong community. They speak their language. I think I actually still remember. Guluga is I love you, and Go Gaeta, I think is I go F yourself. When I was with them, I got to stay with them for a week. It was the coolest thing I ever did in my life. But what I learned from them was they don't mingle with Vietnamese unless they're trying to sell something, because they had markets, they sold clothes and yada yada yada, and they did repair stuff. It is much harder to find these diverse people. If you get into it, try, be polite, respectful, do understand they don't act like Vietnamese people typically. So have an open mind on what you're about to jump into, but it's 100% worth it. And their food, the best pho I ever had was in Lai Châu by a Hmong person. I'm dead serious. It wasn't even Vietnamese made. And the Vietnamese people are the ones that recommended it to me. Number 4, the Vietnamese language. I get asked this all the time about the language, and I'm going to answer it right away. When you sing karaoke, you do not respect the tones. You just say the sounds. You don't actually use the accents. So when you do sing karaoke, no accents. Remember that. Let's get into the language itself. There's 3 primaries. You have the north. This is very proper. When you get to the south, though, and personally, I think the south is a lot easier to learn because you don't have to really focus on a lot of grammar or anything. You can literally speak horrible grammar Vietnamese, and most South people won't even question it. They'll be like, oh, okay, cool, here you go, whatever you're trying to do. And then finally, there's Central Vietnam. Central Vietnam it's like a whole different language. As you guys probably see in my old videos, I speak South Vietnamese. I understand the South dialect Vietnamese to an extent. When I go to the north, they understand me, and they also ask me where I live in Saigon at the same time. You'll hear this a lot with Vietnamese too. Well, let's say they can't understand the north people that well, or the north say they can't understand the south very well. It's because the language is a tad different. It is mostly with the accents part. But Central is like a whole new language. So to give you a story, I went out there to interview the English teacher out there. You guys see that video some time ago where we were talking about how a non-native teacher becomes a teacher in Vietnam. And that night we went out to this little beach area, and some of his Vietnamese friends were there. And I was talking to him in Vietnamese, and this guy just looked at me like I was ridiculous. And then I finally told him, and then I asked him after, I was like, hey, so how do you say this in Vietnamese? Because apparently I'm saying something wrong. When he told me, it didn't sound anything that I understood. And when I told him I speak South Vietnamese, he laughed at me. He's like, oh, we don't understand that stuff, man. We don't even understand the North half the time. So do understand, if you speak North or South Vietnamese, Central Vietnam, they're probably not going to understand you that well. And this is why all of this information is important. If you're moving to the South like Saigon, Ho Chi Minh, if you're going to go to the North like Haiphong, Ha Long Bay, Hanoi, like to live. Or if you're going to go to the Central to live, know where you're going and focus on that part of the language. 99% of Vietnamese language apps and programs, Pimsleurs, all this stuff, they focus on South Vietnamese because it's the most common for tourists. Quote unquote retire, even though you can't retire in Vietnam, they try to. Or they get married and live there long term. They all speak the South. So this is why it's important to know where you're going to be and what to learn. But my overall advice, though, if it came down to you didn't know what to do, just learn the South. And real quick, before we get out of here, though, I want to talk about the accents. Vietnam has 5 accents. They'll say 6, but there's only 5. The 6th one technically is no accent, so I guess that is an accent. But it is very important to know how to use the accents, because one word can mean many different things. Things like pho, you can get away with it saying any word in Vietnam. They understand bi sao bo. They'll understand this everywhere. The example that we got through the article was just using ma. So you have ma. All of these have different meanings. So just saying ma, M-A, can be ghost, butt, mom, grave, horse, rice plant. Like, I don't know what the hell that is. But imagine going to your friend's mother and saying, oh, you're such a beautiful horse. Vietnamese, it's a total language. So do know where you're going to learn so you can focus on that tone, because that's what makes the North and South so different, is that tone. Central, again, it's mostly just a different vocabulary. Number 5, Vietnamese people are some of the happiest people in the world. Everyone's always kind of smiling, having a good time, etc., etc., etc. Regardless that Thailand's called the land of smiles, Vietnam apparently is way more happier. In general, if you're in a tourist area, everybody's typically really happy. I rarely get people that are just like pissed off. Now, if you're meeting the locals, like in D1 or something like that, you're going to run into some a-holes. But that's kind of the same anywhere in the world. I don't care where you go. I was in Malaysia. We met some real a-hole Malaysian people. But not all Malaysians are like this. You know, when I was in Thailand, land of the smiles, we met some assholes in Thailand. And it's the same in New York and California. You get some a-holes. So do keep that in mind. Bonus number 6. Vietnam doesn't legally have a drinking age. Now, there's restrictions that are more moral-based, but there's not typically a drinking age. So if a 15-year-old wants to go to a gas station and buy beer, he legally can. And you'll start seeing this if you move out to like countrysides and stuff like that, that people typically have their little kids go to the store and buy them alcohol and bring them back home. That is so normal. I saw it all the time. The amount of times I'd be at a co-op buying food or, you know, beer or whatever I was buying, there'd be like a 9-year-old behind me with a 6-pack. But with this no limit, this brings us kind of when we talk about Vietnamese people are the happiest people. Vietnam is a very intoxicating country, as I said. Vietnam is number 3, the 3rd largest alcohol consumer in the world. And the thing with Vietnam is it's in the culture. It's part of the culture, and it happens all the time. There is no time to drink. There's no beer o'clock. It is very common to wake up in the morning, 6, 7 o'clock, walk to the coffee shop and see people sitting on the side of the road drinking Tiger beer, getting just trash. And they're not homeless people. Like, these are just normal people. The amount of times I've seen taxi drivers just get drunk and they get in their car and take you somewhere. Like, it happens all the time. Drinking is heavy in here. This is a big reason why Vietnamese have health problems as well. So if you're trying to go to a country that's heavy in the partying and drinking, Vietnam is definitely one of the spots. Vietnam also, Saigon, Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City, is probably one of the most partiest, insane places in Asia for partying. I've never seen any other country that compares to Vietnam when it comes to actual partying, but only South Vietnam. North Vietnam, Central Vietnam, it's way more calm. It reminded me more of like Thailand and stuff, where it can get crazy, but it's never that crazy. I hope that answers it. If you have any other questions, any articles you want me to burn through, check the email below, send them my way. I will go over more of the video, give you my 2 cents. I have so many stories about living in Vietnam. 7, 8 years there, man. I got a lot. Sometimes I don't know how to put them into the videos, but when I get stuff like this, I can put more examples together for you guys. So I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you again.